Why did NBA logos go crazy in the 1990s? And why was this delirium mostly confined to the NBA and not other sports? Now, if you're not familiar, almost 2/3 of the league did a rebrand in the 90s, and they did not hold back. The Rockets go from this to this. I cannot explain what's happening here. The Rocket has extra engines for some reason and teeth now. Over in Washington, they decided to throw everything away, even the name, because nothing says basketball like a wizard. I remember watching Lord of the Rings and thinking, this Balrog fight is cool, but when is Gandalf gonna hoop? Up in Canada, a debate raged over whether basketball-playing animals wore shoes or not. Toronto said yes, clearly. Vancouver, though, was firmly in the negative. Then there's Detroit. They went from the bad boy era to this. I mean, I have so many questions about this. Mainly, why did I buy it? Did I think I could pull it off at my advanced age? Could I have ever pulled this off? At what age should a man stop wearing jerseys? Anyway, our story starts with Alexander Julian. When he was a kid, he got his collar ripped off his favorite blue shirt in a fight. So he took a collar from an old yellow shirt and sewed it onto the blue one. His tailor tried to stop him. Now, side note, I guess kids had tailors in the 1950s. But he did it anyway, and something unexpected happened. When he wore that shirt to school, a girl talked to him. And he said, yep, all right, this is what I'm doing with my life. I'm going to be a fashion designer, and I'm going to do wacky things. Now, he's from Charlotte. So when the NBA expands to his hometown in 1988, he gets the call to design the logo. That design instantly becomes iconic, especially the starter jacket.
This was the one to have, the creme de la creme.
The Charlotte Hornets.
Yes, the Charlotte Hornets. Probably the most legendary one.
You're on the Forbes list in this jacket, big dog.
The Charlotte Hornets one is the classic.
I still want one to this day.
In the end, the Hornets sold more starter jackets than most teams sold tickets. Now, this wasn't the first time a team's gear had become a fashion trend. Raiders and White Sox caps were iconic in the 80s, but it's the first time a team deliberately tried to be trendy and succeeded. And the Hornets weren't even good, but their merch proved you could win in sports without actually winning. They created a market others didn't see. Team gear as fashion, not fandom. Now this happens time and time again. A brand proves there's a market where people didn't know one existed. Red Bull did it with energy drinks, Yeti did it with premium coolers, Starbucks with new ways to deliver mass amounts of sugar. But this type of business is tough to maintain because your innovation is discovering a market. You have the first mover advantage, but you don't have a patent or another barrier to entry. So competition will come in and be fierce. That's what happened to Charlotte. Over half the league rebranded in the mid-90s. Teams ripped off the teal, the mascot, the pinstripes, all hoping to get a piece of this newly found fashion over fandom market. But look closely at these logos, if you can. I know some are quite unsettling. There's actually a lot more going on, like the bevel, the emboss, the drop shadows on the text, or the gradients and use of 3D on this one. Often, if there's a large-scale change, underlying it is a new technology. So let's look at these logos again compared to the Charlotte logo. Can we spot the technological change? The answer is this is analog, and these are digital. Programs like Photoshop and Illustrator were widely adopted in the early 90s, greatly increasing what designers could do. And you have to sort of forgive designers. They kind of went overboard for a couple years there, drunk on that new power. Kind of like me when I first had disposable income. I know I went a little too far with the Legos. I'll get it under control eventually. Might take a divorce or two, but I'll rein it in. Now there's another technology that helped make these digital designs physical. Dye sublimation printing. You were no longer limited by stitching stuff onto jerseys. It was possible to print whatever you thought up onto a jersey. And those jerseys bring to mind that famous Jurassic Park quote.
Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
So we solved it. The Hornets started the party, and fueled with digital tools, that party got a little out of hand. Except we're leaving out maybe the most interesting part of the story. If the Hornets were so cool and redesigned so easy, why didn't every team rebrand? And why were the Wild logos largely confined to basketball? Let's go to football. There's a team called the Cleveland Browns. That's their name, just Browns. No logo, nothing. Their helmet is a solid color. And that color is, you guessed it, orange. If ever there was a team needing a rebrand, it's them. Further, In the mid-90s, the Browns moved away and became the Baltimore Ravens. So the NFL gave Cleveland a replacement team. This new team could be named anything, could be something cool and Cleveland specific. But no, they chose to be the Cleveland Browns again. So why? Louis Vuitton, Chanel, Hermes, Cartier, Rolex, Ferrari, Tiffany's. What do they all have in common? Things I own? No. Luxury brands, yes. But also, do you know how many times they've made major changes to their core logo? 0. If you're a luxury brand, you're selling legacy. A rebrand torches that mystique. Football teams and baseball teams are steeped in legacy. Hence, the only teams that went wild in these leagues were the expansion teams and teams that actually wanted to torch their legacies. Like the Broncos, who were literal punchlines in this era.
Oh, the Denver Broncos!
In the NBA, storied franchises like the Lakers, Celtics, and Bulls didn't change a thing. Rebranding would have diluted their identity. Their visual consistency was a signal of their elite status and timeless relevance. But the rest of the league? Well, the NBA is relatively young with newer fans. Their audience would be receptive to rebrands. So let's break it down to see how it all happened. I've ranked the NBA teams by prestige, which is a composite of titles won as of 1995 and recent winning percentage. Then I ranked the teams by how wacky their logo was. This was less scientific. This was based on my own personal, finely tuned, fashion sense. All right, let's put it on a scatter plot. We got more legacy this way, more wacky this way. Teams then fall into 4 categories. In the lower right, we have our high legacy, low wackiness. These are our luxury brand franchises. If they do a rebrand, it's just a minor tweak. In the bottom left, we have our low wacky, low legacy teams. These are the neglected franchises. We got a team here whose old owner was so bad that the NBA made an actual rule named after him to prevent such incompetence from ever happening again. Then we got a team whose owner is a literal villain in a TV show. Then there's the Mavs, whose owner at this time may or may not have been aware that he owned them. Then there's the Nuggets, who are owned by a soulless corporation and does the only rebrand in this era that makes the logo less wacky. We go from this to this to this HR-approved nothing burger. Now, the New Jersey Nets are in this zone and an interesting case. They almost embraced the chaos of the era and rebranded as the Swamp Dragons, but pulled back from the brink of greatness and continued being named after a piece of equipment. But I want to live in a world where the Swamp Dragons exist, so let's pretend that they did this. That ups the wackiness for New Jersey. Now in the top right, you have legacy teams like Philadelphia, Detroit, and Golden State that had fallen on real hard times in the 90s, both as cities and as teams. They're struggling with attendance and embraced wild rebrands to try to revive their fortunes. The rest of the teams all do rebrands or are expansion teams, and they follow that general pattern of less legacy, more wacky. So we've explained what's going on here. We have a first mover, the Hornets, then we have a bunch of tech-enabled followers, and some luxury brands that don't budge. The exception is the Rockets, a great team with a storied history that did the wild rebrand that we started with. And like I said then, I can't explain what's going on here, and looks like I still can't. If you'd like to look at these topics in more depth, head on over to our Substack. Or you can watch more from the Econ Nerds.